What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday we got a handful of small fixes for Black Ops 6, just taking care of a small number of the issues that popped up with Season 3 Reloaded, as well as some persistent issues. Nothing really too major in this one, however, they also updated their Trello, and they've now finally acknowledged a bunch of the bugs and issues that I pointed out in a video about a week ago. And that's nice to see because at the time of making that video, there were a bunch of issues that popped up, as well as a bunch of issues that have been around for a long time, and yet the Trello at the time was completely clear, as if they had no idea that these bugs existed. So it is nice to see them acknowledge a bunch of these bugs. However, there's still a list of bugs that I will be talking about toward the end of the video that haven't been acknowledged yet, and I just want to make sure I'm staying on top of those and bringing those to light. So first, let's start it off with yesterday's really small update, just focusing on the multiplayer side of things. The first thing they did is they extended the High Art event until May 22nd. Then for UI, they addressed an issue that prevented players from selecting the How Prestige Works button in the Prestige menu if they were queuing for a match, which is obviously a pretty edge case thing. I'm sure that's not really ruining the experience for too many people, but nice to see they're fixing stuff like that anyway. Then I would say probably the most impactful fix with this little update was they addressed the issue that popped up with Season 3 Reloaded that would prevent players from changing their perks properly when using the Perk Greed wildcard. And this is something where there was technically a workaround for it, but it just wasn't very intuitive, and it was working just fine before the update. So it was really frustrating, and I know a lot of people didn't figure out the workaround, so they couldn't get the right perks on their setup. But that has now been fixed, so it's back to normal there. Then after that, they addressed an issue where the stats displayed in the loading screen into a hardcore match could be incorrect. After that, they addressed an issue where the wrong icon would be displayed if an enemy was using Flak Jacket. So I'm assuming that's that hit indicator, the one that lets you know that they're using Flak Jacket if you hit them with an explosive. So it just informs you of this is why that player survived. Apparently that was displaying as the wrong icon, sometimes at least. And then with the Codcaster, they just addressed a bunch of bugs and issues with Codcaster that weren't working properly, which obviously isn't going to have an impact on the vast majority of the player base. But for the competitive side of things, it's nice to see. And that's it for yesterday's little patch. It was a very small one. There are still a really good handful of issues. So let's now move over to the Trello board, which is now updated and has a proper list of bugs here. And we'll first talk about the ones that have a fix scheduled, which means they're probably waiting for a title update, so they couldn't get this into a hot fix. So some of these were probably going to be waiting until Season 4 unless they happen to get a title update out between now and then. But for this section, we have the bug that popped up with Season 3 Reloaded, where the voice chat icons would sometimes remain on players' screens from previous matches. So you just have those little microphone indicators constantly on your screen. Next up on the social menus, since Season 3 Reloaded, oftentimes your entire online friends list would just show at the main menu, or it would show that they were playing in the same game as you when they obviously weren't. So it wasn't properly informing you of what was going on. Were they in a match somewhere? What were they playing? For that bug, it looks like they have a fix scheduled there. Another thing that a lot of people have been noticing, especially when trying to disable crossplay, is like a PlayStation player, for instance, would turn off crossplay entirely, so they should only be running into PlayStation players, and yet the icons showing you what platform people are on would display nothing but PC players in their lobbies, which obviously shouldn't be happening. Apparently this is just a display bug, because they have a fix scheduled for this. They just say some players may display an incorrect platform icon in the game lobby. And that's it for the bugs that have a fix scheduled on them. Now let's talk about the rest of them that they've acknowledged and they're investigating, but they don't have a fix scheduled, so therefore we may or may not see a fix for this by Season 4. We'll have to wait to see on that. The first one here is console and PC control text can display at the same time and overlap on the Customize Operator screen. That's the first time I've heard of that particular bug. Next, ranked play combat records don't properly display the seasonal data. Then loadout menus sometimes display placeholder icons or icons from different modes when switching from a different mode into multiplayer menus. I've noticed this in the Warzone menus as well, so going back and forth. It can often break your loadout, or at least how your loadout is displayed in the menus. I don't know if it's actually breaking the loadout itself. Then the winner's circle may not appear after a match in Stakeout, and I have noticed this with a couple matches that I have played in Stakeout. There was no winner's circle, and I kind of liked it. It was a lot faster and more streamlined and just gets you back into the next game a little bit faster. And then finally we have acknowledgement of a bug that I believe has been there since the launch of the game, if I'm not mistaken. And this is the Dreadnought bug. So after calling in a Dreadnought, the player may be stuck in a state where they can no longer crouch, slide, or change stance. And this is one we've been pointing out for a while now. They're finally investigating this one. So hopefully we'll see a fix for that at some point soon. And for multiplayer, that's it. Those are all of the bugs that they've currently acknowledged on the Trello. And it is nice to see they've made some updates there. They haven't abandoned the Trello board or anything. However, there's still a list of bugs and issues. Most of these popped up with Season 3 Reloaded, but some of them have been around for longer than that. And I just want to make sure I continue bringing these up until we get some acknowledgement from the developers. The first one is in the firing range. This one actually popped up with Season 3, if I remember correctly, where when you enter the firing range, if you're hovering on a gun or a loadout, it will always just default to you spawning into the firing range with your first loadout or your favorite loadout, not the loadout you were actually on. And while I would consider it to be more of a minor annoyance, since you can just hit start, change loadout, and then select the one that you want, it doesn't make it any less frustrating, especially because it was working just fine before and now suddenly it's not. So it would be nice if they could get that one worked out. Next up, we have a bug that was there early on in the game's life cycle. They fixed it, and it was fixed for like at least a full season if I remember correctly, but the bug has returned. This is your crossplay settings are not saving unless you use the workaround. So if you want to turn crossplay off, for instance, you can do that and it'll work for the first match that you search for, although the icons might be displaying improperly as we talked about. However, after playing that match, if you check your crossplay setting, it most likely got reverted back to the previous setting. So it's not saving properly unless you set your crossplay option, turn your game off immediately, don't search for a match or anything, just turn your game off and then turn it back on, and now it will save that as your crossplay setting until you do the same thing again if you wanted to change it. So for most people, they want their crossplay setting set to a certain value and they just want to keep it that way. This workaround works great for that. You just have to do it once and it should save for you for good. But still, it's an issue with the game that should be worked out since there's so many people out there that won't see videos like this informing you of that workaround. And I still see a lot of people complaining about this, so hopefully they can get on top of that one again. Next, something that people are still experiencing. This one's been around for a while now, but it does seem to be really inconsistent. Some people have never experienced this, some people are experiencing it constantly. This is spawning in with a different loadout than the one that you've selected, and it's usually like a default XM4 loadout. It's not even a loadout on your list. It's just a random default loadout that you end up spawning in with. I've still been seeing reports of people experiencing that, even though I haven't seen it for myself lately. Then a new bug that popped up that a lot of people have been pointing out is if you're on controller and you're going through your settings, there are certain settings where you want to hit the show more option, which on PlayStation at least is square. However, if you look at the bottom, that's also the button for resetting tab. So if I do try to hit show more on that, it prompts me to reset that tab. And therefore, I can't actually get into that setting to show more and make those adjustments with certain settings. Some of these, if you hit X, it will allow you to go into that. So like sensitivity multiplier, for instance, you do see that redundancy with the square button for reset tab and show more, but hitting X will open it. For others though, like sprint assist, for instance, I can't show more. If I hit X, that just opens up the menu to turn it on or off, but it doesn't allow me to show more. So that one's obviously a problem. There are certain settings that we literally can't access, or perhaps there's a workaround that I'm just unaware of at this point. Like maybe you have to plug in a mouse and keyboard if you want to change that setting, but obviously you shouldn't have to do that just to make some adjustments to your settings in the game. After that, a lot of people have noticed, myself included, Nuketown is no longer available in private matches, and this happened with the Season 3 Reloaded update. It just disappeared from the options there. And then finally, I have more of a nitpick rather than a straight up bug report here. And this is with the addition of the blueprint swap feature, which I'm glad to see that we finally got it there. They've added this in the customize tab as the first option instead of the camo tab. And this has just been a minor annoyance because a lot of us have the muscle memory. If we want to change out the camo on the gun, we have that muscle memory down, so we don't even need to look at the menus. We just know which buttons to hit intuitively, and that gets us into the camo screen. And now it just kind of breaks that muscle memory up. Also, just thinking about it, how often are people going to want to change a camo on a gun versus edit the skin entirely? I think camos should be taking priority over the skins tab, and therefore the camo tab should be displayed first before skins, at least in my opinion. But again, like I said, that one might be less of a bug, more of just an intentional design choice, or maybe just a really minor oversight. But I did want to bring that up because I do think it would make sense to move that skin option over so camos are once again the default when you open up that tab. And there we go. That's pretty much it as far as the bugs I wanted to report that haven't been acknowledged on the Trello board at this point. When it comes to the other big issue that popped up with Season 3, this is the matchmaking times, the connectivity issues, as well as the fact that it just seems that the matchmaking is much more strict than it was. It seems way sweatier than it was before the update. I don't know about you guys, and I would like to hear your experience with this down below if it has improved at all. For me, it seems to have improved a bit. Like the matchmaking times don't seem to be quite as long as they were, but it still doesn't feel nearly as good as it did right before the Season 3 Reloaded update. It still seems like something has changed there. I'm seeing high pings on a more frequent basis. I'm seeing more desync in games as well, even when I'm on a lower ping. And especially if I play solo, the matchmaking seems sweatier than ever. However, when I play in a party, I don't really run into this issue at all. So I still think they probably just cranked up the SBMM, at least that's what it feels like. And it has had me avoid playing this game even more while playing solo. I just have no interest in solo play now, especially after this update, because it does feel like we're playing ranked play in public matches with bad connections layered on top of that. That is gonna wrap it up today's video. This is where I wanna hear from you guys in those comments down below. First off, has your matchmaking experience improved at all since the launch of Season 3 Reloaded? And second, are there any other bugs or issues that didn't come up at all today in today's video that you wanted to point out? If so, please let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.